Hi, episode 131 of Teh Tarik with Walid. Today is the 5-year anniversary. So thank you everyone for your support over the past 5 years. And I am delighted to have somebody from the Progress Singapore Party, the PSP's A team, no less, in GE 2025, Mr. Sani Ismail. So thank you everyone for joining. Hopefully the technology doesn't fail us this time. So Sani, when you're ready, I will. Thank you, Uzair. First comment, congrats. Thanks everyone. I appreciate the support. So Sani, let's try this again. Oh, I hope there's nothing incriminating on your.
How is it now? Is it better?
Yeah, much better, much better.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Sani, for joining us. So let's get to it. We have hopefully 45 to 50 minutes. So, what happened to PSP in the general election?
Okay, so thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I think the results of the 2025 general elections were no doubt disappointing to us, but in some ways it is quite inevitable.
Why is it inevitable?
Well, you see, the thing is that from the time the EBRC report was released and to the time when the writ of elections were issued, there was like 35 days, and so we had a brand new constituency that came into West Coast, Jurong West. And I say so because consistent with the feedback that we have been obtaining from the constituents post-election. And I think the common theme that we hear from them is the lack of visibility. And, and within 35 days to reach out to 41,000 voters, it's no chicken feat. We were no Superman, but we did our best to reach out to everyone. And crucially as well, I think one of the other feedback that we've received is that most of the constituents were not fully aware of the fact that they had moved from Jurong GRC to West Coast Jurong West GRC. So, but nonetheless, we are still studying the possible factors of the results, and we will improve.
So the number one reason for you is the redrawing of boundaries. That's the number one reason for the poor showing.
In my view, that played a part. I mean, we can't say it did not play a part because the fact, the redrawing of the boundaries is one thing, but the duration of time span from the time the EBRC report was released to the time the rate was issued was another thing. And I think it's important for everyone to bear in mind that it's 35 days apart. Now, then, of course, obviously, a lot of the constituents, and I'm speaking from the feedback that we've obtained post-GE, whereby, people have said that some were not aware and, lack of visibility. Of course, we tried our best to cover the ground as much as we could within the 35 days or so. But like I said, we're no Superman, and it's no chicken feet.
Right. So I take the point about redrawing, and I think PSP was the party that was most hurt. Well, SDP as well, by the redrawing of the boundaries, but especially PSP, the West Coast team, formerly West Coast, then West Coast, Jurong West. But the lead time, and I agree, it's a problem. It's a structural problem that needs to be solved for sure. I think it should be 1 year. My suggestion is 1 year, if for any redrawing of boundaries, so it's fair to the opposition. But isn't that a constant across all GEs? So that cannot explain the dip that PSP suffered this time round, right?
Well, I mean, I agree with your view that there should be a longer time frame. And, our parliamentary system, our legal system are all based on the English legal system and the British parliamentary system. And so even like in the UK, boundaries are, post 2020, boundaries are not reviewed every elections. It's about every 8 to 10 years. And then there's also a time frame, about 1 to 2 years, before, from the time boundary reports are released to the time election is called. That is something that we hope someday, we will get to Singapore, just to allow more level playing field and to not, I mean, to allow for the constituents to also the time to assess the capabilities of any party, any parties filling the ground.
Okay, thank you, Sani. So you still sound hopeful because I was one of those that had written the obituary for PSP.
I
And I
know.
know your party isn't too pleased about that. And I'm happy to be wrong. I'm happy to be proven wrong on this. I don't want to be right on this. And why do you think I'm wrong? And why are you hopeful?
Okay, I mean, firstly, right, let's face it, we are a young party, right? We've only had two exposures in the general elections, and that it's a learning curve. Success doesn't come overnight. We understand that, and I think all of us in PSP have the tenacity to go on for the long haul, and because we understand that it takes time for the electorates to be able to assess us. And obviously, I mean, we hope that, you know, we are definitely making a regrouping and a comeback. And unfortunately, now we don't have the two NCMPs in Parliament.
Right.
But we are confident that our renewal plans will bode well with the voters.
So I have a few follow-ups. So don't you think you are, first of all, much weaker than before because Dr. Tan Cheng Bock, who was the face of the party, is no longer going to contest. Secondly, the NCMPs, it gave PSP so much exposure. PSP has got, I think, over the past 5 years, and I'm not exaggerating, probably millions of dollars in terms of ad time, right? Free ads because of its parliamentary interventions. Don't you think that the PSP is in a much weaker position now?
But I think with regard to Dr. Tan Cheng Bock has moved away from the CBC and has taken the advisory role. And I think let's not kid ourselves. Dr. Tan Cheng Bock, when he set up the party and led the first GE in 2020, he knows that there has to be some form of succession. He doesn't plan to stay for eternity within the party, and that the party has got to be independent and stand on its own 2 feet based on the Secretary General and the CEC themselves. Obviously, it is a loss, I dare say, to many people in terms of not having the NCMP seats in Parliament. But again, that's where we will come up stronger, I'm sure, in using alternative online platforms and medias to ensure that our voices could be heard and our views are aired.
Right. So I think for what it's worth, I personally believe that PSP added a different dynamic and dimension to Parliament. I don't think Parliament is now worse off with only two parties. And I think I really like the incoming NCMPs, Andre and Eileen. I really like them. I have no doubts they'll do well. They'll do great. But I do think PSP brought a different dimension, and I think it's healthy for our parliament to have more than two parties. So I do agree that it is unfortunate, right? You mentioned something that you mentioned that you're a young party. Well, you're a young party in terms of how long you've been around, but are you really a young party? So, Mr. Abbas is the new chairman, right? I mean, he's younger than Dr. Tan, but he's above 70, right? If I got it correctly. So, are you really a young party? And isn't that the biggest problem with PSP in terms of its renewal? Can you really say it's a renewal, or maybe it's just a changing of people rather than a renewal?
Okay, I think uh, PSP within its core has always been very uh, uh, cognizant of the fact that it needs to rejuvenate itself. That's why you would see from the CEC elections in the first quarter of this year, we brought in two young members were elected into the CEC. One of
Oh, you broke up.
Okay, yeah. One of whom is Mr. Samuel Lim, a lawyer, and he was 29 when he was elected into the CEC. It is just that for us, rejuvenation or renewal, it's not a buzzword. It's always been within the core of the PSP, but it is only now. I mean, which is, I think the time is right, post the general elections, for us to take it to the forefront of things. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's only two young-ish people, right? Not that I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with having older people in the CEC. I think actually that is the way to go, because older people have more wisdom and so on. But can you really say it's a rejuvenation if it's only two of them are younger? I mean, you are a young gentleman, of course. I mean, I'm
Thank
talking
you.
about younger, younger, younger people. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think we have to look at it holistically. The two, if I may use the term, young CEC members is just a representative of the whole party in itself. I mean, you may be aware that we have the PSP Youth Wing, and that is something that we are going to develop it even further in the coming months and years.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I've interviewed Jess Chua before. She was from the youth wing, of course. Thank you for that answer. So you would vehemently disagree with me that the PSP is dead. You are in for the long haul. You are confident that you'll be contesting in the next election.
I don't know if I will be contesting in the next general election. That is something for the party to decide. And if I'm, but I think the slate of candidates in 2025 general election from PSP, my other colleagues and other new co-opted CEC members like Stephanie and Lawrence, we are in it for the long haul. We understand that success is not overnight, and we are all committed. The whole CEC and the party in itself is committed to implement the Secretary General's wishes in terms of how we would rejuvenate itself as a party.
Why not dissolve or merge with SDP, for instance? Since the WP is in the east already, and then you can have a Western strategy, pull resources together, you have more A teams. Why not do that?
Well, that's above my pay scale to answer the question. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. But personally, what do you think? Is that a feasible option, you think?
No, I understand the core beliefs and understanding within PSP, and I know where we as a party intend to get to. We have, notwithstanding the results of the GE, we had not, hid in a corner and licked our wounds. We've gone out there to meet the constituents, to hear from them where we could have done better. And I think in line with that, we have looked at it, and we are going to take a few lessons from that.
What has been the reaction? What have been the reactions? What did the voters say? Why they didn't choose you?
Well, many of them that I gone around and were disappointed in the results as well. But they had hoped for representation in Parliament by the PSP. But like I said before, one of the issues that I came across was that there is lack of visibility, and followed very closely by constituents who were unaware that they had, especially constituents from Jurong West, Taman Jurong Spring, were unaware that they had actually come into West Coast GRC.
Was this a lot of people?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, because most of them said that the visibility wasn't there, and when we had to just explain that, okay, we only got to know of it, say, 35 days
Right,
before.
right, right.
And then they were shocked. Oh, really? Was that right? So that's why at the start, I just said that the results were like inevitable.
Right, right. So I'm thinking, how inevitable was it? I mean, I understand if not winning is perhaps winning was difficult considering 41,000 new voters and so on. But I went to as you know, I went to the last rally. I chose the PSP one because I hadn't been to any, and there were a lot of people. I think the difference between the PSP rallies and the WP rallies, you have opposition supporters from all around Singapore. So even those who are not in the constituency, so it's always the numbers are bloated and inflated, right? Because, but the PSP one, I thought probably the overwhelming majority are Jurong West Coast voters, the ones who went to that stadium. So I still felt that for above 45% was easily attainable, just based on the rally itself and also what had been happening before. Do you think something changed on polling day itself?
So I think across the board, we've seen the 4% swing, towards the PAP. So that played a factor. And then in terms of, again, I stick to my belief, having walked the ground and heard from the constituents, I stick to my belief that it was just too short a time.
Okay. So if you had 6 months, you would have won, you think?
If we had 6 months, then I'm sure whatever that I've just mentioned to you as to my disappointment will not be the same.
Okay.
Probably, but nonetheless, I'm quite confident. If we had 6 months, it would have been different.
Wow. I really like your confidence and optimism, and I think it bodes well for PSP's future. Maybe I need to rewrite my obituary and redate, change the date.
A resurrection. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, don't write us
Now,
off now.
let's not get theological here.
Yeah.
All right. So, I wanted to ask a bit of a personal question because this happened for the first time, to my understanding, for the first time in this general election, both from the PAP and from your party as well. So you contested as an Indian candidate, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. So, and to my understanding, and the PAP had also the equivalent, your counterpart, Dr. Hamid Razak, right?
Yes.
To my understanding, this is the first time that Indian Muslims are contesting under the Indian category for GRCs.
Mm.
So how does that play? I'm Indian Muslim too, So this perennial identity, we are not really Malay, but we're not really Indian, but we are Malay, but we are Indian also. You know exactly what I mean, right? So
Yeah, I do.
how do you what do you see yourself as? So I'm sure you are as comfortable being a Malay, being called a Malay and Indian, or do you speak any Indian languages?
Okay, I think with regard to the point you mentioned about this being the first time, if I heard you correctly,
Yeah.
for the PAP and for the PSP for that matter, fielding Indian Muslim candidates under the Indian banner for a GRC. Yeah. But I think there's always a first for everything, isn't it, Walid? And it's a good sign. Right?
I agree. It's a good sign.
It's a good sign. It's a good step forward, because I think, and why I say so, is because we have to move away, I think, in my view, compounding into different segments of ethnicity or racial.
Yeah.
We are all Singaporeans, and I strongly believe in that. And so I have, I'm Indian by race and I'm a Muslim by faith. So, if it's been said that I had to apply for minority certificate, even though I'm a Singaporean. But, I've got no issues with that, because at the end of the day, if I had been elected, I would not have just been acting for the Indians or the Indian Muslims or the Malays. I would be acting for the interest of all constituents, regardless whether they voted for me and my team. So I think that's the mindset that I had, and I continue to have, that I will be serving all constituents,
Right. So
regardless of race, religion,
thank
whatnot.
you. That was a beautiful answer, and I think so. Your preference is not to have all of these racial categories to begin with, if it was up to you.
If it was up to me, yes, I would say so.
Yeah.
Because
Thank you.
you see, when we have this mix of, when we have this requirement, I understand the rationale behind it.
Yeah.
Okay, in terms of having the minority certificates and whatnot on, minority representations. But then I think what we've seen is over the past few years that where that particular member of the minority representation, for some reason or other, is not within the GRC, and that's deemed to be okay. So I think therein lies, in my view, a bit of inconsistency.
Yeah, I agree. I think the GRC is another thing we need to relook. The size of the GRC is one. The movement of heavyweight ministers across GRCs, that's another. But also the idea that you are there to represent your community, right? The minority community. But then you cannot be too minority, right? You cannot be too Malay or too Indian, right? You're supposed, otherwise you may be accused of politicizing race or religion. So I think there are a few contradictions that need to be sorted out. I don't necessarily think we should do away with the GRC, but I think we really need to take a look at it and see where we can improve it. I
Yeah.
think downsizing is definitely one. I think the redrawing of boundaries, like you said, the people don't know where they are. No, I used to live a lot of people without ever moving, right? They have been in 3 or 4 constituencies in their life, right? And
I,
then what?
I have experienced that
Right,
in this last general election. I've moved from one GRC, one area to one GRC to another without actually
right.
calling the movers to move my furnitures.
Right, exactly. And then I find it hilarious with all this redrawing. And then the MPs will say, "Oh, we have our estate identity." What identity? How can we have an identity if we keep moving and the boundaries keep shifting, right?
But you
I
see,
heard this. Yeah. Sorry,
yeah.
sorry, sorry.
So
Yeah.
sorry, Walid. But you see, this is fantastic. I mean, this is the thing that if more of us talk about it,
Yeah.
then hopefully someday it will be heard by the powers that be, and to
Yeah.
understand the sentiments of people on the ground.
Yep. The other thing, thank you. I agree with you. The other thing I wanted to ask about also, how much do you attribute your loss to? Of course, there are a lot of factors, right? There's what you said, the redrawing of the boundaries, but also there's a national swings, even in areas which were not redrawn. So I don't think it's just a redrawing of boundaries. So maybe it's a fear about the tariffs. Maybe it's Gan Kim Yong becoming the centerpiece of the election, that reminded people of the tariffs. But how much do you also attribute it to just an extremely popular prime minister?
Um, that I mean, we can't rule that out. That is possibly one of the factors as well. And we hope that I mean, yeah, that we can't rule that out. I mean, the prime minister's popularity, and like what I had tried to say as well at the rallies, it's that we have. I mean, the electorate has got to be aware that about giving such big mandates that has been given. But nonetheless, I think for us, it's something that we will reflect upon and improve as we go on.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask you about something that had transpired during the hustings, where Leong Wan Wai, your colleague, said that people are not going to elect estate managers, something to this effect, not going to elect estate managers, they're electing parliamentarians. Do you think that was a mistake and that backfired? Because a lot of people still no, I agree with him philosophically. I agree with that. But that is not the reality of the world. That is not the reality of voters in Singapore, right? So do you think that was a mistake?
Um, I would say that probably what he said was taken out of context. And why do I say that? Because if you look at our teams, and I'll speak on behalf of the West Coast Jurong West GRC team or the PSP. So we had Dr. Tan Cheng Bok, who has been exposed in town council management, and in fact one of the persons who started the town council many years ago.
Yeah.
And then there's other colleagues as well within us, and myself in estate management. So definitely for us, we don't put ourselves forward and not being ready to run the town council. So we understand that. But I think it's been taken out of context in the sense whereby if you look at the mechanics of the town council in itself, right, it is the elected MPs form within the board of the town council to give advice and guidance. But it is the town council operations team that will ensure that the municipal services are being carried out. And that's where I think just before the nomination day, I was interviewed by the Straits Times, and I did say that if I were elected, in terms of addressing the municipal issues, we would be looking into the health and safety matters within the public housing estates. And that is something that I personally, being in the estate management business, would definitely advocate for and ensure that such being done.
Okay. So thank you. So estate management is very important to the PSP.
Oh, I mean, we when we did our door-to-door visits, and I'm talking about months before the elections and everything else, when we visit households, we speak to residents, and it's not just about national issues. We also ask them about municipal issues. So we've had feedback like, from poor lightings in corridors to trees protruding close to the windows, especially those in the
Right.
lower floors, hence pests coming. So we do, and why we did that was so that we are aware of the issues that are faced by the constituents, and we will be ready to address those issues if we had been elected and were running the town council. I mean, I was in Teban Gardens when some residents raised some matters to me with regard to safety issues that has come about as a result of certain upgrading works within their block of flats, and the demographics of that particular block comprise of many elders, and that there were risks, tripping hazards, being exposed, and so on and so forth. And I feel strongly about it because, again, my bread and butter is in estate management, fully aware of it, and I go on the health and safety concept holistically rather than calling it workplace safety and health. Because when you say health and safety as a concept, as a holistic concept, then you have to understand the duty of care that is being owed to others as a result of whatever works that you're doing. So I felt very strongly about it, and I raised it in the rally, the last rally on the 1st of May.
Right. So if that is true, right, that estate management is an important part, or constituency issue, shall we call it? I mean, because you are not the existing MPs, the current incumbent MP, so you don't manage the estate, but constituency issues are important. How could the opposition ever compete with the PAP on that? Because that the PAP has a strong advantage in that regard. How could you possibly compete if that forms a percentage of voters' considerations? The
I think
opposition has already lost that, right?
with hindsight, I would say, and this is my personal view, I think it's not just about talking about walkways and stuff. Not talking about lift upgradings, repainting. Those are things that need to be done and have to be done. But in terms of, I think, looking at it a bit deeper, in terms of contractor management, in terms of the safety aspects as a result of those works, and I think that's where the area that we would be focusing on. Uh, in the interest of the constituents, and I think ultimately we were briefed by our Secretary General, Mr. Leong Manwai, that if we were elected, we would be the voice in Parliament and a friend in person.
Oh, so that was your motto, a voice in parliament and a friend in person. And I have met all five of you, and I must say all five of you in the West Coast team are extremely personable, so I definitely can see that motto coming to life. Um, what how would you position yourself as a party? If I were to ask you, what is the PSP? What does the PSP stand for? How is the PSP different from the SDP or the WP? What would you say? What is your ideological positioning? What makes the PSP the PSP?
I think the PSP is being the people-centric party, and that will, I would say, make us stand out from the rest. And you will see how we go about that in the coming months and years as we commence this renewal process. We dare to be different, and our approach will show that as well.
What is that approach, that people-centric approach?
Well, I mean, in terms of, we will have different kinds of delivery methods in terms of how we're going to connect with the constituents and how we would be able to offer to advise them, or to a certain way in terms of building the groundwork. And we have to acknowledge that the PAP has large machineries that has allowed them to cultivate that kind of connections. So for us, we will be hoping to take a different approach to connect with the constituents better.
Sounds like there are a few tricks up your sleeve that you are not willing to reveal yet.
Well, for me personally, as a person, I believe in innovation, and my motto is always, I dare to dream and I dare to be different. And I think PSP has that agility, especially within the CEC team and within our Secretary General as well, and then the party as a whole. We are agile, and we take the results of the last GE very seriously. We take the feedback that we receive from the constituents, very seriously too, and hence we are working on implementing the renewal plans.
So I wanted to ask a couple of questions based on our discussion. The first one is, the other part of the JRC is people carrying other people into parliament, especially if you have a heavyweight minister. Now, of course, the reverse can be true as well, or rather the same can be true. Oh, you're drinking Teh Tarik as well.
I've got to be in.
I think this is the first time, in
It's Teh Tarik,
130
we want it.
episodes. Thank you so much for staying true to the brand, man. Thank you. So, the same is true for opposition parties as well. So, one could argue that Dr. Tan Cheng Bock, and I think rightly argue that Dr. Tan Cheng Bock got Hazel and Manwai into parliament as NCMPs. But do you think that severely disadvantaged the PSP in this particular election, especially? Because Desmond Lee, I think, is, from what I've heard, from my interactions with people, is pretty popular on the ground.
Yeah. I mean, as we've seen, based on what you understand, as we've seen, popularity has, translated into a win. But like what our Secretary General has said, we viewed it at the time as a way of thanking the West Coast GRC voters who had returned very good results for us in GE 2020, which enabled Ms. Hazel Phua and Mr. Leong Man Wai to be NCMPs in Parliament. And on that basis, it was felt that Dr. Tan, Hazel, and Man Wai should be again at the West Coast GRC as a way of thanking them for the last results. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So there's a question here. PSP is often associated with anti-immigration or anti-immigrant sentiments. So how do you plan to, moving forward, champion the concerns of Singaporeans without falling into the zone of xenophobia or even entering anywhere near that zone? Because not all concerns about immigration policies can be dismissed as xenophobia. I think that is not a rational thing, right? Because some concerns about immigration policy are extremely rational, but some could easily become xenophobic as well. So how does PSP intend to balance that? And do you think that reputation is fair now? That
I think from my understanding is that we want an equal opportunity situation. We accept that that foreign talents are welcome to Singapore to play a part and to contribute to the Singapore story. We cannot. No man's an island, right? We can't just live by ourselves and cut off from everyone else. But and in terms of, I would even go further to say, in my personal view, that we have to, where foreign talents come in and contribute to Singapore, its economy, and create employment as a result and stuff, we would need to also look at to how we could make them feel at home.
Right. Okay. So you would reject any characterization that you are peddling in xenophobia, as in the party is peddling in xenophobia.
Yeah. So certainly not. So we understand. Look, we are in a cosmopolitan country, right? And with our TFR rates and everything else, we understand that we need to bring in talent, real talent to come in to contribute to the economy.
Right. Okay. So there's a question here by Ryan, a young Singaporean and undergrad. How will PSP get their residents or Singaporeans to care about politics outside of constituency issues like sheltered walkways? Seems like sheltered walkways and playgrounds were important features of the elections. At least that's what the PAP campaigned on. And if they said that they would be vindicated by the results.
Yeah, I think that's where we part of our renewal plans in terms of different ways of reaching out. I think during the latest press conference by our Secretary General, he's mentioned ways in terms of nurturing leaders and more online presence. So we hope that through that kind of engagement and through engagement like with yourselves, that we could we could play a part in terms of addressing national and international issues outside constituency issues.
Okay, all right. So there is also another question by Arun, and this is a perennial problem for the opposition. I think it seems like the PSP is always able to attract like a lot of minority candidates, and the opposition is less able to. Do you think that is true in this particular election?
Sorry, Walid, I lost you. Broke up there.
Sorry, the question is, the PAP has in the past been able to attract more minority talent. Do you think that is still a problem facing the opposition?
Well, I mean, I personally, I mean, you look at the slate of the opposition side, and I think it's very credible. From Workers' Party, Singapore Democratic Party, there are credible candidates, minority candidates, and I think this is something that is probably true in the past, but I believe and I hope that I'm right that we as a society are moving more in a direction whereby we want to have the more alternative voices, and and it's not opposing for the sake of opposing, but rather it's fine to be different and to sit around the same table to better whatever policies that are in place. They are good policies, don't get me wrong, but I think no one can disagree that there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. But maybe some people do disagree. Some people think Singapore is utopia already. So, how does the next 5 years look like for you? You mentioned the people-centric approach, but all parties would say they are people-centric, right? So they would be using social media. They'll be going on podcasts. They'll be doing NPS. So how will the next 5 years uh, look for you? And I do think if you do still survive till the next election, I do think that's the make or break election for PSP.
Mm.
So the next 5 years are the most crucial years of PSP's existence, I think. So
Yeah.
what happens in the next 5 years?
Well, I think we've always positioned ourselves as a moderate party, and more people focused, and that's evident from the proposals within our manifesto at the last general election, right? The minimum living wage, reduction in the weekly working hours, the addition, or rather the reinstatement of 3 public holidays. So it's all about and putting Singaporeans at the front of the people-centric approach. So it's all about creating a conducive environment that, in one way or another, would help citizens to sort of feel less burdened, and more a balanced lifestyle, if I could say that.
Yeah, I think the three policies you just mentioned, if you poll them amongst Singaporeans, right, you'll probably get 95% at least for approval rating. Three more public holidays. Who doesn't want that? Well, other than maybe some employers, but generally people do want all of those policies, right?
But
So, yeah,
Walid. So sorry, I mean, as an
please.
employer, right? I support those because at the end of the day, happy employees, happy employers, right?
Right, right.
You know, you would, I mean, in the long term, one would probably get more productivity and staff retention as well. They're happy and so on and so forth. So, you know, the
Sani,
work-life balance.
you're sounding like a socialist already.
I think it's time for another sip of my Teh Tarik, eh?
A democratic socialist, I meant, which is good. It's not a dirty word. I am a fan of Bernie Sanders. I am a democratic socialist. But thank you. I hope more employers think like you, and think that that is an important part. But don't you think there's also a legacy thing in Singapore? We have been, this has been inculcated in us, we shouldn't have too much free time. Your productivity basically determines your worth. We are an ultra capitalistic society, right? And to be fair to the government, to be fair, they have tried to change it slowly in some areas. But I think like MOE, for instance, right? They want to cut back on exams and so on, but they are perhaps victims of their own success, right? That citizens have bought all of this, such that now citizens, if there's no exams, right, they are worried. They send their children for exams at the tuition centers. And don't you think this is a legacy thing? That's why that kind of mindset, the one that you just said, which is perfectly rational, but a lot of people still do not want those sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, it will take time. I mean, and I'm sure that as time goes on, the workforce, the current and the workforce of the near future would appreciate that. I mean, look, it comes with the territory, right? So we a developed country first of all, and we have to ensure that there is some sort of a work-life balance. We do not want to, our employees or our citizens to be overworked, and I think it would take time, like everything else. Yes, you're right. It was a legacy matter, but as generations change, and I think in time it will, there'll be more buy-ins for it. Just look at it. Look at how something like COVID had changed working from home, the mentality of working from home.
Yep.
I dare say that before 2020, probably, you tell your employees, I work from home today, and he or she will give you a funny look,
Right.
right?
Right.
But that has allowed for flexible working arrangements, working from home, and suddenly people realize, hey, there's another way of doing things. So
Indeed.
I think, in terms of it will happen, but it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I think that is an excellent point, right? The thing that we never thought was possible, working from home, and people would just, are you so lazy? Then before COVID, right? But now it's is a norm, and it's shown that it can work. It has worked. But surely we don't need another pandemic for us to change mindsets.
No, no, no,
Uh,
no. But
right.
that's where, I hope that, like you say, like I just highlighted to you the three uh, um, proposals within our manifesto, right? But I think that's where we need to be able to amplify more, so that the electorates are aware as to the people-centric approaches of our proposals. And I think given time, they would accept the benefits that come with it.
Okay. Thank you, Sani. Sani, if it's possible for us to end on a bit more light-hearted, I suppose, note, if we could do a quick fire round, I'll ask you some political stuff related questions, political related questions, and you just tell me the things that come to your mind, if that's possible.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay. So, political idol can be local or foreign.
Tony Blair.
Oh, oh wow. Okay. I want to get back to that. Uh,
That's a quick fire one.
okay. Sorry. So Tony Blair. So favorite PAP politician other than Lee Kuan Yew?
Other than Lee Kuan Yew, of course. Lee Hsien Loong.
Oh, okay. Oh, all your answers don't allow me to do quick fire. Yeah, okay. So, favorite opposition politician outside the PSP other than Pritam Singh?
JB Jeyaretnam.
Okay. So, biggest problem in Singapore's political system? Just one.
Boundary review.
Sorry?
Boundary review.
Okay. One political wish for Singapore.
To have more alternative voices in Parliament.
How many more would you consider success in the next election?
I would say if we can get to 1/3.
So that you think that is feasible in the upcoming election?
Let's see. It is, one can live in hope.
Yes, and without hope, if we lose hope, we lose life itself. Thank
Absolutely
you,
right.
thank you so much, Sani. It has been an absolute pleasure. I think just this morning, I met Abdulrahman, the host of Plan B. I bumped into
Oh,
him,
yes.
and I was talking. I said I was interviewing you today, and he said, "Oh, you're an erudite man," and I think you have really shown that in this interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's
And
been a
by the way,
pleasure.
before we end this, I just want to wish your podcast happy 5 years anniversary.
Thank you so much. Okay, and you also had the right drink for.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sani. It's
Thank
been
you,
a
Walid.
pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.